Welcome to the Doctor's Life Podcast with Diane Ansari Wynn, MD. Dr. Diane is a coach for doctors. With her 15 years of experience as an anesthesiologist and certification as a physician development coach, Dr. Diane coaches doctors on how to live a rich life of purpose, fulfillment, freedom, and happiness both at work and at home. In this podcast, Dr. Diane brings together doctors and researchers that are experts in health, wellness, stress, and burnout, as well as doctors that have been successful in clinical practice, academics, non-clinical careers, and business to share their expertise and life experience so that you can live your own life purpose, fulfillment, freedom, and happiness. To get free access to a PDF and video of easy and proven strategies that melt stress away and keep it away, simply register at www.dianeansari-win.com. That's www.dianeansari-winn.com. Now here is your host, Dr. Diane Ansari Wynn.
Hi, it's Dr. Diane here, and I have a quick request before we jump into the show. If you like this podcast, it would mean so much if you took just a moment to hop over to iTunes, write a review, and rate the show. That is how other people will find the show and get the same great value from it that I hope that you're getting. It just takes a few moments to click a star rating and write a quick note. Now, on to the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Doctor's Life Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane Ansari Wynn. Today, we are talking about a topic that doesn't always get talked about. We are going to be talking about divorce today. And I'm so thrilled to be able to discuss this with our guest, Dr. Toyin Falusi Adeyemi. She's an infectious disease doctor at Cook County Health and Hospitals, and she's Associate Professor of Medicine at Rush University Medical Center here in Chicago. And she's been in practice for, how long have you been in practice for, Dr. Falusi? Almost 20 years now.
Yes, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Fellowship, yes.
She's really involved in clinical research in HIV and aging, hepatitis C, and health disparities. And she is a physician scientist. She's authored or co-authored more than 50 manuscripts published in peer-reviewed journals. And I just have to give you a shout out because that's very, very impressive. In her spare time, she loves to read, dance, volunteer, travel, and enjoy life to the fullest. I really have to applaud you, Dr. Falusi Adeyemi, because you wrote this book entitled The Decade After, Thriving After Divorce, Tips on Staying Positive and Getting Better, Not Bitter. Yeah. And it's really a very personal journey, but given that you have your background in science, you bring some gravity to the topic. It's not just a memoir, and reading it through, it has some really great suggestions for coping and eventually thriving after divorce. I think it's a really important book because there's a gap, between books that are written by psychologists and they seem sort of dry and cold. And then you've got, on the other hand, where it's memoirs, and your book brings those two together so beautifully. Yeah, and it's your first book, so
yes, fantastic.
So we'll talk more about the book as we go along, but as we always do, I start out with how you got into medicine and how you got to where you are today, and then we'll go on and talk about your book and provide some really great information to the audience. So
sounds great. Well, Thank you. I'm excited to be on your show today. And for me, getting into medicine, since second grade, I actually knew I wanted to be a doctor. I adored my pediatrician, and literally I have essays written from third grade about what you want to be when you grow up. I always wanted to be a pediatrician. I ended up not becoming a pediatrician, but it was something that I really had no plan B. It was medicine or bust. And I like to joke, and I tell my friends that it was either being a physician or backup dancer for like a rap group. And I think growing up with Nigerian parents, that the dance thing was thought to be kind of like a very far plan B. So I've always wanted to be in medicine, and so I went straight, high school through a college med school, and that was in Nigeria, and then came back to the U.S. in the 90s and did my internal medicine residency at UIC, stayed for a chief year, and did my fellowship in infectious diseases at Rush County program. And I've stayed on faculty there since 2001 because my passion is with HIV and viral hepatitis, and I get to work at the county where we have the single largest outpatient HIV center in Chicago with over 5,000 patients. So for me, it's been amazing to be able to find not just my career, but my calling, I feel, doing what I do here at county. And I get to do a combination of things where I do both inpatient and outpatient medicine, but I get to do clinical research, patient-driven research, and I get to teach. I have students and fellows and residents and pharmacy students. So I get to do a combination of teaching, patient care, and research. So I think it's a win-win.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I love that you're following your passion, but able to help so many patients in that passion as well. So another passion of yours has been writing lately. Let's talk about your book. It might seem almost like a contradiction to folks that are listening to this podcast right now because you and I sound so joyful and happy. And we're talking about divorce.
I know.
It's like typically something that people should be like, where you kind of think like, oh, you should be so sad about it. But that's the whole point of your book, The Decade After Thriving After Divorce. So let's talk about your book, how you came to write it, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure, Diane. And like you mentioned, divorce is painful. It's never easy, and it's not something that we're happy, we're joyful, but it is serious. But also the point is to be able to figure out that life does not end with a divorce, and that you can not just survive and not be in survival mode, but to actually thrive and grow from the experience. So, and you brought that up earlier, trying to find that right balance between the technical, fact-driven books which are out there, which are absolutely necessary. And I am a proud card-carrying nerd. I love books. So I went into the light. So those books were important and are important. And then there are the books at the other end that are either all weepy, mopey, or how to get the man, or tell-alls that are scandalous about what happened in a marriage. And there's a lot of that. And people like the sensationalism about what happened, and this isn't about that. This is really just when it happens, if divorce happens, how to, one, prioritize the best interests of the children. I have 2 daughters. And how to move on and move forward in a positive way, like not having that define who you are. It is something that happened, and being able to grow from the experience and move on in a positive manner, and to get better during the process. Because even if you're divorced for a year or 2 and get remarried or not, a year or 2 later after the divorce, you're a different person. And that person shouldn't necessarily be a bitter person. You're different, and the difference can be in a positive direction. And so I wrote this 12 years after my divorce because it's been in my head for a while, and friends have said, hey, you always, seem pretty well adjusted. Your kids seem okay. But it just felt like the right time when I started to write it about a year ago, and that felt like the right time. So with that, it came easily. It flowed really easily. And I wrote it saying, I'm a physician, but I have no expertise on divorce. I am not a counselor. I'm not a psychologist. So this is coming just as a woman who went through a divorce and is living life after a divorce. So I like to think of it as suggestions, not necessarily advice or telling people what to do. This is my experience, and I'm just sharing it.
Right. I think it's particularly great for a physician to talk to other physicians about this, because when you read the book, has a very conversational tone. It's like you're sitting with someone that gets you and feels very positive towards you, and it's just kind of telling you. Your book anticipates the questions that people have as they're going through, as they're going through the decision to divorce. through the next phases, recovering, living with, being divorced, and coming out on the other side of it, so to speak. At the same time, I don't want to make it so black and white, and you could probably speak to that. Did you feel like it was a gradual process, or had before and after, or let's talk about that a little bit.
It is a gradual process. And one of the things that every marriage is different, and every relationship is different, every divorce is different. And so even reading through the book, there are going to be people who maybe feel like, wow, this seemed so smooth and right, you guys just made it work right away. And what if, and I put it in there, what if my co-parent does not want to be involved? What if? So it really is a process, and there are going to be days when, or weeks when it seems like nothing seems to be going right and everything seems to just be out of sorts. And there are going to be days when it feels like you actually don't really think about the divorce and you're just moving on. And then it's important to realize what are the triggers for you and what are the things that make you happy, and trying to identify those things. And sometimes there are people or situations that may not necessarily help you kind of move in the right direction, and realizing and removing yourself from those situations. And sometimes, as physicians, we're used to being really successful at everything we do. I mean, to get through med school, you've come through a whole lot of odds and you're doing it, and we're used to setting our minds to stuff and getting it done. I mean, thrive on that. And so when a marriage fails, it feels like a big failure. And so there's a lot of self-imposed, there's a lot of pressure on ourselves about why did this happen. We have so much data in our heads about what happens with children of divorce, and you're just like, oh my God, did I just ruin my kids forever? You're already thinking about that. And then a lot of times, especially if you're half of a physician couple, you probably met up in college or med school. That's the world and sometimes friendships change because people have to take sides or feel like they have to take sides. It is a process, and being able to understand what things make you happy and what situations maybe triggers or set you back is really important to be able to deal with things as they go on, and really taking care of yourself. And as physicians, sometimes it's hard for us to take that time to do that. And someone else might be able to say, for the next couple of months, I'm actually going to go to work because I need to keep work going. But I'll be in my office and have the door shut, and everybody knows for the next 2 months, I'm just going to get the reports done. But we don't have the luxury of that in medicine. We have to interact with people constantly. We're doing that when people are coming to us at their most vulnerable. So we have to have our game up. We have to be there for them. And so that adds to that added pressure as you're going through a divorce. You're hurting. You're trying to protect your children and make sure that your decision hasn't ruined them for life. We think that way. And then you have to wake up every day and put on your best face for people who need you because they're coming to you, when they're not at their best. So it's really a lot of trying to take time for yourself to figure out what it is or situations that make you happy. And the things that trigger or kind of get you down into that spiral, to be able to identify and remove yourself from those situations.
Your point is a really strong point. As physicians, no matter what's going on in our personal lives, we're expected to come with and take care of our patients, 100, 110%. And some of that training comes in med school and residency, where we are giving bad news to patients, where we've just come, I come from anesthesia, so come from maybe trying to save a life and someone leaves this life, and then, you just kind of don't have a lot of time to process that. You just go like right to the next one, like, and everybody kind of like goes, oh, that's so sad that they passed away. And, we have another case in half an hour, so we learn how to compartmentalize, and we're good at doing that. However, I think what you're speaking to is giving that time at some point to be able to work through the feelings that you have. But but also tie into moments of joy and peace. And it's okay. It's okay to feel okay.
Correct.
When you feel okay.
Correct. Correct.
It's okay to feel bad when you feel bad, but it's really okay.
Correct. And that doesn't mean that you didn't love your ex-spouse and that you're not hurting, but there are times when you feel, and it's okay. And I have a funny part, since you talked about that, Diane, in the book when I went and met with my chair, who I really didn't talk about it at work to anyone, and it was months in and things were happening. The kids were good. We had a new school, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, something's going to give. Someday I'm just going to be in the middle of rounds and just lose it. Because and I felt like this is not good. So I had, he had an open door policy, great guy who, when I was in fellowship, he was my chair. So I ended up staying on faculty. I had a very close relationship with him. But I literally walked into his office, plunked myself down the counter, and I said, okay, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going through this divorce. You may have heard. And I told him very briefly when I had to take a day off to go see my lawyer. And I said, I seem okay and things look fine and I don't want to take any time off, but I just feel like this is not normal. So if you ever get a call saying that your faculty member is on the floors or doing crazy stuff, just know it's divorce. And he said, you know what, Toyin, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to be just fine. I said, well, I don't know. But kind of like what you were talking about, Diane, it's okay to be fine. And when you find joy and purpose in your life and know that that failure of the marriage does not define your entire existence, then you're okay being fine. You find joy in the people around you. You find joy in the fact that the kids seem to be okay. And that gives you joy. But yes, I did have moments when I thought, yikes.
Yeah, exactly. Toyin, I was reading your book and there are some things that stood out. I thought that it might be helpful for the audience to hear that I thought were really, really useful.
Okay.
You had talked about the 7 habits.
Yeah.
Yes. Your take on the 7 habits of highly effective people.
Correct.
In the divorce process.
Yes. The Steve Covey book is one that I've read a couple of times, and each time I find different things in the book that really resonate with me. For the divorce process, when I was writing the book, I thought, oh my gosh, some of those habits, 7 habits of effective people, which is really written more around business relationships and work, and he did give a lot of examples about family stuff too, I thought were very effective. So, the habits about one, being proactive and beginning with the end in mind and thinking win-win, right? Mm-hmm. And he kind of broke them into private victories and then public and then renewing your soul. And the private ones were the first 3, being proactive and knowing that, when divorce happens, things are going to change, and knowing that things will change for you, for the children, and thinking ahead about what resources and what things you need to put in place. Very important. And I like the second one about thinking, win-win, or beginning with the end in mind. The end is that you will get divorced when, you start the process, but that you want well-adjusted children at the end. If you're getting divorced with children. And so beginning with that in mind, it allows how you go through the process. You can frame the process in a positive manner, really, for the children, and putting first things first, right? If the kids are the priority, it allows you to be able to put your differences and the reasons why you guys are going your separate ways kind of becomes a second issue, right, when the kids are first. So those are personal victories. And then fourth one about thinking win-win and eventually seeking first to understand and then be understood. I think if I was going to think about which of those 7 habits I struggle with the most, which you're supposed to own your strengths and admit your weaknesses, is that, sometimes you work, about understanding where others are coming from. Because sometimes something may seem like a perfect or great idea to you, but sometimes not everyone's where you are at that point, and sometimes people need sometimes a little convincing to get there, or really thinking about sometimes when people ask you questions about your divorce or seem like they're unnecessarily intrusive, you got to figure out where they're coming from. If in their mind your marriage was perfect, and you guys were all couple friends, and all of a sudden you guys are going your separate ways, you got to understand, to them, this is like, what is going on? They're trying to do some digging to see how did this happen? How could it happen to us? So you really can't understand everyone, and you really shouldn't. You have limited time and resources, but for people who matter to you and people you care about, taking time to understand where they're coming from through this whole process is important. And then, the sixth habit is about synergy and knowing that, asking for help is fine. And sometimes as physicians, as strong women, or, we like to think we can do it all, and the supermom complex and all that, but it can deplete you. You do better if you actually have help. Now, you have to be conscious about if it's offered in good faith, and you can set boundaries. Sometimes people like to swoop in and help out, and that gives them, in their mind, unfettered access to your personal life. No. So
there's like a little bit of voyeurism in
exactly. You gotta be a little, figure it out. Taking help when it seems offered in good faith, but also still setting boundaries about what you will or won't share, because it's important to keep things that are private. And then the last part is renewal. Renewal is really just renewing your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit, everything. And this is something this is what you do, Diane. This is how, to optimize your being. And it's really important to be able to renew yourself, to start the process again. So those habits, I thought, it's a great book. For every situation, I think you can definitely harness those habits and put them into good use. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you definitely have. And I love how you're able to take something that was, like you said, it's like a business book, but you're able to, with your agile mind and
apply
it to your own situation. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking about co-parenting, which is such a big issue when you are divorced, and keeping the kids in mind, and because some people, they won't even get divorced when it might have actually been the best thing. They stayed in an unhappy marriage because of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could share what your successes about co-parenting, or your challenges even.
Sure. Really, the two things I highlight the most are realizing that you need to, no matter what, maintain civility with your co-parent. We'll talk about why that's important for you and also for the children, and also realizing it's not a competition. And those are two really important things. So co-parenting, like you brought up, Diane, it's sometimes divorce is actually the best option for the children. If there's so much unhappiness and the tension in the home and things that the kids are part of. When people get divorced, there are different parenting arrangements that come up, and people work towards that. And that's part of doing your research. And I do emphasize that children have a great bond and affinity and love for their fathers. So unless there was abuse involved or something where the kids, for their well-being, should not be around their co-parent, your spouse, there should never be a reason that a child is restricted from seeing their co-parent. And sometimes as women, we do that, especially if the woman gets the custody of the kids. If it's not a joint custody or they're the residential parent, while they're working through whatever the issue is with the ex, the kids then become pawns in this game, and it really is not to the kids' advantage. So it's hard, you're hurting, you love this person, but trying to take yourself out of the picture and allowing the kids access. I have daughters, and my dad is and was my first love, and girls and their dad have a bond that is different from anything else, and they should be able to do that. A girl who has the unfettered access to their father and knows the love of their dad, they have a confidence that it's indescribable. The confidence that you are loved by your father it makes you walk into a room and you own it, because you're like, I know who I am. Mm-hmm. And so it really is important, no matter what your custody agreements are. I was a residential parent, and my co-parent got to see them, as often as you wanted and every other weekend set up. But then if you wanted to see them during the school week, it was great and it worked out very well. Sometimes, some people say, well, my co-parent didn't keep up their end of the agreement and things. And there are times when, because of work or because of their other relationships, it doesn't happen. And one of the things we can do is kids get upset sometimes when the other parent doesn't show up, is to understand why they may be sad and really empathize with them, but knocking down the other parent in front of them and all that really, it may make you feel better temporarily, but it really doesn't necessarily make things better for the kids. So putting them first allows you to be able to do that, knowing that they have been with the other parent, also important as part of their growing up. They do miss, little children do miss the perfect. I did remember seeing, my kids, there were times we'd be at restaurants, the three of us, and you could see them looking longingly at a table that had the dad, the mom, and the two kids, would have those discussions. Or on Mother's Day, if we, they would take me for a nice breakfast here in Oak Park, and, we'd be sitting there, you would see them, there are, kids like the normal structure. But we would talk about it, and they would spend time with their dad on Father's Day. And so it took putting the kids first, then you can do it. And work around whatever the issues are, and then realizing it's not a competition. And a lot of times, the glamorous part of parenting, you may, as the residential parent, you're the one who has to do the homework stuff and the curfews and all that stuff, and the parent who sees them less often gets to be the fun parent, right? And that's like, we're going to go out for ice cream. You don't have to do homework because you did it during the week, and and then the gifts and all that stuff, and trying to outdo the other parent actually doesn't work out well. We decided extra money we had were going to their college funds, and instead of just trying to outdo each other with a gift. And I do say that if you think about it, for the non-residential parents, when they have the kids over, they get to have to, after every 5 or 6 days, figure out what's going on. So gifts are sometimes good icebreakers. They're also nervous and anxious having the kids over. They're not the ones seeing the kids all the time. So, but setting limits with your co-parent about what is okay for gift giving, so you don't have bratty entitled kids. Sometimes with divorce, we go over. That's the adults trying to, get over our guilt and stuff. So we keep buying them stuff. But that doesn't necessarily make things any better. So really, maintaining civility with the co-parent, including whoever their new spouse or whoever they're in a relationship with, because your children will spend time there. And the more comfortable they are over there, the better it is for you and for them. So that civility expands to whoever they're with, but really also having a discussion about who your children should be exposed to and who they're around. And to be able to do that, you have to have some kind of relationship, because if you guys are always antagonizing each other, it's hard to then say, well, I really would like this to be what happens when the kids are over.
Yeah. And it can be a challenge.
It can.
To, like you said, to maintain civility as you move forward, especially when one is angry or upset. But as you said, it goes back to your purpose, and your purpose is in co-parenting is to raise amazing children. And so it takes some inside work, as whether you're divorced or not. It takes a lot of inside work to become a good parent, and that this is another way that we can find an opportunity to grow and thrive.
Yeah, because then even, when you're in the same household, you have sometimes different ways of approaching children, right? And different discipline styles and different, but you have that discussion. At the end of the day, you're in bed and you kind of say, okay, well, we need to have a united front. This is what we're going to tell, but when you're living in separate households, to be able to then have what it is that we want for our children means you guys still have to communicate, because you can't have a different style in one home and then the kids are over there and there's a different style and they're confused about what works and all that stuff. So to be able to do this when you're not living in the same household and you don't get to decompress at the end of the day, lying in bed with a glass of wine or whatever, then it becomes, when we do get to talk, if it's by email, whatever it is, this is what we need to do. And if it's always reactive because someone's mad, then you can't get to where you are. Everyone's feelings are hurt, egos are in place, and then, the kids just kind of like, it's the Wild West.
Right? Yeah.
Because if these people can't get their act together, then we'll just do what works.
Right? Yeah, we're all trying to, as we go along, whether we're divorced parents or non-divorced parents. I also noticed in your book that you had mentioned some ways that we can support our colleagues, our friends that are going through divorce, and some things not to do. Let's talk about just a few things that we can do to support our friends and colleagues that are going through what can be a very challenging time, and things that we might mean to do but shouldn't do.
So how can we help our colleagues? Sometimes people don't share that they're even going through a divorce. So if you were, let's say you heard, sometimes it's awkward, it's hard to try and, how can I help? And,
hey, how about that divorce?
I know, how about that divorce? It's hard enough, and sometimes, just even knowing, especially if they were a couple you were close with and everything seems so okay on the outside, it kind of sometimes makes you kind of pause and say, well, what happened to them? What's up with us? Just letting that person tell you as much or as little as they want to, offering help if there's anything I can do to help, and not necessarily expecting that they will share details of the marriage with you. And help may be in the form of, and I live in Oak Park, and I put it in I can't imagine any other community I would have been a single mom in, because it's a very supportive community. I had friends who were there who just were like, okay, if you're running late from work, I'll help pick up the kids. The soccer teams, they did all the sports and plays and things like that. So being able to offer help, tangible help, knowing that there are times when, especially when the kids are with dad, so if you have a co-parenting agreement, when the kids actually do have time with dad, sometimes it's good because you just want to be by yourself. That's like a time to decompress and think. And then sometimes you do want to talk to other people. You want to be around other people. So being open to, say, hey, if when the kids are not with you, if you want to hang out, if you want to watch a movie, if you want to come over. So if you have close friends, just offer that. And if they say no, doesn't always mean no. It just means that this week they just want to be and process things like that. So offering help, being there as a listening ear, not being too curious about the details of what's going on, because sometimes people are moving on. They've actually walked through certain things they're processing, and having to go back and talk about certain things may not be something they want to do. And just being really, just like in any relationship, right, being willing to see where that person is and what they're willing to share is very helpful. And I do talk about, for us as physicians, married or not, or not, a lot of times, when you have kids, sometimes you can't make it to all the school stuff. You don't know all the details of what's going on. Other moms on the, who who don't work outside of the home or are more active in the school stuff to share things that are going on, things with the kids, things that are helpful. And just knowing that, sometimes people do need to take time off during this process. I do own that at the end of the book, that I do think, what could I have done better? Because I like to do that. Like, okay, I think things went pretty well, but the things I know I could have done better, as 12 years out, was taking help when it was offered. I had I can do this, and I can do it, and I'll keep doing it. So, but you know what? After a while, it just it depletes you. So, asking for help and taking help when it's offered in good faith, not closing yourself up to all the married people, not thinking, okay, well, there are all these couples. I don't want to be the fifth wheel or third wheel or whatever it is, being okay with that. And also just knowing that it's okay to take care of yourself. When the kids are not with you, if you have free time, if you want to lie in bed till 2 p.m. and do nothing, that's okay. It's all right. And it's guilt-free and it's good. So those are things that I think we can do to support each other. Let's not talk about people, when they're going through a divorce. They're already very sensitive and hurting. And just taking time to, if they do seem like they're open, to just offering help and helping out in ways that whatever way they choose, they want help.
Tangible help. So maybe saying, like, instead of maybe leaving it open, because, you know, we mean well, so we'll say, well, if you need anything, let me know.
No.
And it might be better to actually, you know, really lock it down. Can I pick you up anything from the grocery store?
Correct.
Would you like to hang out? You know, just be more specific.
Correct.
The person that's going through the divorce may not feel comfortable in saying,
especially as physicians,
you know, right? Especially as physicians, in asking for something, but we might say yes if it's offered very concretely.
Yeah.
Well, this is an amazing conversation, and your book is fantastic.
Thank you.
The Decade After, Thriving After Divorce. Dr. Falusi, if you don't mind just sharing where people can find your book.
The book is available on Amazon. It's available in print and Kindle version, and also at Barnes & Noble. And actually here in Oak Park, it's available at the book table. And I think there are a couple of retailers that will probably pick it up through the Create Space website. But for now, the easiest way is really Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And you can get the print or Kindle version. My website is thedecadeafter.com. It's thedecadeafter.com. I have a Facebook page. I have Instagram now, which I never had. Twitter. It's all at The Decade After. So it's pretty easy. I am excited about the book. And one last thing, Diane. For the last 3 days, I've had 2 different people send me inbox messages through Facebook asking if this was only for divorced women or people trying to go through a divorce or thinking about divorce. And one of the 2 also said, well, what if reading this sends the wrong message to my spouse, because it's all about divorce and thriving. And actually, so I had a little thing today, and I said, this has come in through my inbox, and I said, I'm glad they reached out because it allows me to clarify a few things. And I said them, number one, I do not advocate for or glamorize the life of a divorcee. Mm-hmm. Divorce is painful. However, if a divorce happens, we should prioritize the best interest of the kids. 2, number 3, as women, we can choose to not just survive after a divorce, we can choose to thrive. Mm-hmm. Number 4, we do know that we all know somebody, one person who's divorced or a single mom, and we can change the narrative. Divorce is not contagious, and we can support each other. It's not. There's a whole part of the invitations going away and the play dates going away because people the kids, you know. So I did put that in there, and it was funny because at the end of that, I said, well, clearly there's still a lot of stigma around divorce. So even kind of openly reading a book about divorce, I said, but if that's a little awkward, then, you know, there's always a Kindle version. Nobody knows what they're reading about.
There you go. There you go. You thought of it all. Well, Toyin Falusi Adeyemi, MD, such a pleasure talking with you. For everyone, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, learned as much as I have. Until next time on The Doctor's Life, I hope everybody stays happy and healthy. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Doctor's Life podcast with Diane Ansari Wynn, MD. Go to www.dianeansari-win.com to read show notes, listen to past episodes, share your comments and show ideas, and pick up your free PDF and video of easy and proven strategies that will melt your daily stress away. That's www.dianeansari-winn.com.